somehow she was not actually that vulnerable to being snatched up or, whatever was happening to these women, she just felt like it wouldn't happen to her. But now, as Sue sat at this train station, which again was eerily quiet and vacant, she couldn't help but feel like she had made a bad decision being there. She felt like she could easily become the next woman who went missing from Naha. And so Sue began to think, maybe I should just go back home and try to patch things up with my husband, mostly for her safety, just to go back inside her home and be safe again. But before she could stand up to do that, she noticed on the other end of the platform this man who was exceptionally well dressed with his beautiful brown coat and fancy pants. He looked like he stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. He came up onto the train platform, and without saying a word, he walked slowly down the platform all the way to where Sue was, and reached into his pocket and he held out a tissue to her because he saw she was crying. And Sue, she's looking up at the sky, and again, there's nobody else here, and she's very much on edge. And she doesn't know what to do. I mean, it was already creepy that this place was vacant, but it's even stranger to have a random man come up to her and try to initiate some sort of interaction with her. It just felt wrong and weird and very suspicious. But as Sue stared at the sky, trying to figure out what his angle was, she could see that he had kind of kept himself standing back from her, kind of a respectful distance, not trying to crowd her out. And he was looking at her with a very sympathetic look in his face. He was holding his tissue out, and he said to her, "Are you okay?" He handed the tissue again. "Please take it." And there was just something about this guy that felt very sincere. And Sue kind of let her guard down, and she accepted the tissue and wiped the tears from her eyes. She didn't say anything. And then this guy, he said, "Hey, do you mind if I sit with you?" And at this point, Sue said, "Yeah, okay, you can sit down." And so this very handsome, well-dressed man took the seat next to Sue, not right next to her, again, respectful distance from her. And again, he asked her, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And for Sue, whose life had been basically miserable the last few months or even years, with this terrible marriage she was in, she wasn't used to being asked if she was okay. And this man, who she didn't know, had caught her at this very vulnerable moment in her life. And it was like all her emotions just came pouring out. She began sobbing hysterically, telling this guy that no, she was not okay. Her life was in ruins. She had just abandoned her family, and she had no idea what she was going to do. And finally, when Sue stopped telling this guy all about her problems, she felt very embarrassed and looked up at him like she was sorry for his saying this. But the man was very intently listening. He was just nodding along, very sympathetic, and he told Sue that his name was Gia Wang, and that he was a director at a factory not far from here, and if she was open to it, he'd be happy to think about hiring her at the factory, give her a new start potentially. It seems like that's what she really needed. And then he asked her if she wanted to come back to his house to discuss this job opportunity further. And with this, Sue had really appreciated everything this guy had done to this point. The second he asked her to come back to his house, she's like, red flag.
You already knew the answer, and now you're asking again?
This guy does have an angle, and it's not to benefit me. So she looked at him with an absolutely suspicious look. No way am I going to your house. I don't know you. Like, I appreciate the tissue. You let me cry, but there's no way. But again, as she's staring at him with a suspicious look, the look on Gia's face remained very sympathetic, very gentle, and it almost seemed like he was just going to get up and go. Okay, I'm sorry for offending you. But before he did get up to leave, Sue said, "Hold on. Actually, yes, I'll come with you." She didn't know why she agreed to go with him. Maybe it was because her life was so messed up at this point that she was just kind of ready to take chances and be sort of reckless. This was definitely that. Big chance, very reckless. Again, she just felt like, there's something sincere about this guy, and she felt like she could trust him. And so, Sue and Gia stood up, and together they walked down the train platform, not saying much. They went downstairs, they went out to the street, and they walked a couple of blocks to where Gia's street was. And as soon as they turned the corner, and showed Sue which house it is, Sue looked up, and whatever hesitation she had still to that point about following a stranger to his house were gone. Because she saw his house was beautiful. It wasn't that it was so grand or anything, it totally fit the neighborhood, but it was very well maintained and totally felt on brand for a guy so well dressed, so well manicured, and frankly so handsome. So Gia led the way to the front door of his house, unlocked the door, he opened it up, and then he gently gestured to Sue to come on inside. Then she went past him, Gia followed him in,